Auntie.
Hey y'all, how y'all
I'm
doing?
Aneek.
Ooh. Excuse me, start over.
My bad.
Do it again.
Stop the whole thing, people.
Well,
No, yeah, we can keep it going.
All right.
Hey, everybody.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing?
I think they said fine.
Good.
I'm Ebony.
And I'm Joy.
And we want to welcome you back to the
Your
Auntie
Auntie's
House podcast. This is such a rough start.
Y'all, this is
that's fun. I like it. I like it. These are solid starts.
Good.
Get in your groove.
Not indicative of how the rest of the episode is gonna go.
That is correct. So, normally we're just way more on one accord, and today we're on a Honda Accord. There's a lot going on. But well, once again, we want to welcome you back to the Auntie House podcast. We're so glad that y'all could join us again. If it's your first time here, welcome into this place. Everybody got that one person in the church that sound like that. Well, as you may know, the season that we are in right now is season 3, and the theme is house guests. Okay, and along with that being our theme, the topic for today is experiencing the journey. So we've been doing a lot of experiencing the journey, appreciating the journey, I believe was our last episode. But these have been really great conversations, and I'm excited to let Joy introduce our house guests. And I just want to name that, like, every house guest for the past 3 episodes has been an uncle.
Yes.
Which is super dope.
Yes.
Because
there we go.
It just shows that, like, men,
y'all be having some sense sometimes.
That is so crazy.
Sometimes. You know, not all the time, but sometimes.
Right. Like, some men got something to say.
Well, I don't know if that was ever in question. I feel like you pay attention to podcast hosts, they always got something to say. But
now that's the truth. Now, okay, wait, before you keep going, let me formally introduce you. Excuse me. So, y'all, I have another good friend from middle school. His name is Aneek James, and Aneek, that's all I usually say, and then I let everybody go ahead and introduce themselves. So, Aneek, tell our house people who you are.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm Aneek James. Born and raised in Georgia, Stone Mountain, Georgia specifically. I met Joy in 6th grade, so we've been friends for a very long time. Excited to be on the show. I've always thought the show was appropriately named. I feel like Joy, even in 6th grade, always had auntie energy. She was like half a chaperone anytime we went on field trips. So, you know, I was the people who I always respected were the adults and enjoy. I always made sure to give her respect. So I'm excited to talk, and hopefully the audience gets something interesting out of the conversation that we have.
Yeah, no, first of all,
that's a wonderful way to put it. She is actually still half chaperone.
Yes, it is. Listen, that we know, we didn't talk about it. I'm the one at the party when I can sense that something is about to shift in the atmosphere.
She's grabbing jackets.
Grab that purse, right?
We
finna head out.
My crew.
Let's go. We out.
there's spidey sense and there's auntie sense.
Yes. Yes. And I think we know which one is superior with them. Okay. Anyway, so with that, Aneek, can you so I want to start from a place that I know has been the heaviest, I think, in your life so far. Can you tell us a little bit about, so my friend is smart. He's getting ready to please address him as Dr. Aneek Enrique.
Yes.
Yeah, coming soon. It's loading. So can you just talk us through a little bit about that journey in particular, like your academic journey?
Oh, yeah, it's been a long one. So where should I start? So I've always been like a good student, like growing up. That was a lot to do with like expectations from my parents. They always wanted to make sure that I was doing this as good as I could in school, making straight A's whenever possible. Even if I get like an A-, they'd be like, okay, why wasn't it an A? So that's something that I've always invested a lot of time in. But I would say it was only in like high school that I tried to shift my mentality to how I approached it, where up until that point, I was doing it because my parents wanted me to do well in school. But then it kind of hit a point, I think like sophomore year of high school, I was like, look, I'm be real with myself. This is a little bit too hard for me to just be doing it because my parents want me to do it. So let me actually decide, like, okay, do I like this stuff? Is this interesting to me? And so most of my class, I mean, like, you know, in high school, you don't get a lot of choices in the classes that you take. But like when I kind of thought of that, I put a little bit more care into like any electives or things I did have an option to pick. I wasn't just picking it because like, oh, I think my dad would be happy if I take this, or my mom would really appreciate if I took this other thing. And I kind of realized that while I didn't love the mechanics all the time of like learning and school, I did like learning things. And so I eventually, you know, found my groove, getting more invested into academic related stuff. And so then in college, kind of like randomly, I like, you know, one of the classes I took, a professor there had said at the end of like the first lecture, like, hey, by the way, like you know, I'm looking for undergraduate researchers. If you like lasers, join the group. And I was like, well, you know, lasers are cool. I am a man that, like, you know, activates a certain part of my brain, like, you know, bright thing is cool. So joined the lab for one semester, figured out that I liked it, and then kind of decided to make it a career path. And so with research, I don't know how familiar, you know, any of the listeners may or may not be, but when you want to do research as a career, you don't need to get a PhD to do it. But if you want to go up in management, you need a PhD, generally speaking. So I knew that that was going to be something that I had to do. So then applied to the PhD programs, went to the best program I got into, which was Columbia. And so that's what I've been doing for the last, almost 6 years. And we are almost done. April, May, around that time, I should be wrapping up, and then I'll be doctor, and then I'll be actually starting my career. Well, it's kind of weird with PhDs. I've been doing work already as a student because you're not really just a student with PhDs, but that's kind of been the path I've taken to get to this point so far.
Jeez Louise.
Yes,
you said 6 years?
That's what he said.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it to most people. Would not recommend. It is not for the lighthearted. Not for the heavy-hearted either. Honestly, it's not for married people, period. But you know, made it some way, somehow, through the grace of God, mainly.
Yeah. Okay, and we know about that. All right.
To you.
So I think you kind of touched on it a little bit from the school side of things, but when you were little, like what did little Aneek say he wanted to be when he grew up? You know, that horrible question we ask children. What do you want to be?
I don't know if little Aneek had like a really strong. Little Aneek knew what he liked. I don't know if I thought about it in terms of what I wanted to be, partially because of what I touched on before. You know, my parents had very particular things, at least mainly my dad had very particular path that he expected me to go on. So like for the audience, like the PhD that I'm doing right now is in electrical engineering. And so like I've mainly been kind of like math focused all of my life, but in terms of natural aptitude, I'd say like naturally I actually was a little bit better at language arts, like English, and like, you know, liberal arts, just generally speaking. Like it's not that the grades were very different, but that stuff came easier to me than the math and science stuff did. And so the reason why I nonetheless invested more in the science stuff was because my dad was like, well, you're gonna need to make some bread, and that's what makes bread, so that's what you're gonna do. So at no point until, honestly, really end of high school, that was really the first time I was like, okay, wait, what do I actually want a career in? Young me, I just kind of like, I knew that I liked a lot of different stuff, but I wasn't thinking about, you know, I wasn't thinking about it as like a central point of identity. I was just more like, oh, I like music, I like video games, I like comic books, but I never was like, okay, I'm gonna be this thing. Yeah.
That's about
Probably because I was just assuming like, well, my dad wants me to be a computer scientist, so I guess that's what I'll do.
I wonder if this is a thing with like boys, like, because you're now so Evan said the same thing, right? Where he, like, my parents said I'm about to be ding ding ding, right? And so I didn't even think about anything else. So I'm wondering, that I don't know if it's a son thing, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, because I don't know if anybody ever told me you're gonna be this, okay? And that on that. So I don't know if you know what I'm saying. Like, I think what everybody sort of agreed on was our parents had certain expectations of us, right? Like, so we expect you to perform well in school, we expect you to get an education, we expect you to do these other things, but as far as like a specific career, I don't know if anybody was ever like a doctor, right?
Yeah, it was the same for me as well. And then when I got to college, I think when I got to college, that was when I met people that were like, my family was like, you're gonna be a doctor or you're gonna be a lawyer or you're gonna be, such and such. I was like, I had never seen that before, honestly. And I was, that is interesting because it was the same thing with Evan as well. Just like my parents said to do this. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess the more I think about it, I guess it is mainly something that I say like my male friends experience more often than I mean, it could be low key a little bit of misogyny. People just don't care. Like they just don't expect much or as much from their daughters, and so they don't they're not as quick to put their hopes and dreams on their daughters in the same way that they might want to put their hopes and dreams on it. Because I was gonna say that's why I think it comes from with my dad. I think so. He came from a very, very, very impoverished background. Like, so he's not even from the U.S. So he's from Antigua, and like from a very, very small, like, he calls it a village. That's kind of like the the vibe it was over there, where like it was a really, really tiny house. He had only his mom really taking care of him and his siblings, and he had like 8 siblings or something like that. So I think like he comes from a background where he didn't have a lot, and then he really like at every step of his life wanted to make sure he could amass as many resources as possible, just like because I think he ended up associating that with security. And I think now that he's gotten it, I think he just is really concerned, or has been really concerned with keeping it. And I think he saw me like my role in that is like, all right, you gonna get something that gets us even more money, or like, secures the family even more so. So like, I do some arts related stuff. Like I did play the saxophone for like a little bit.
Come on, little known Black history fact. I never knew that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very, very brief. No, I liked it a lot. But the thing is, I feel like, I think my mom was happy about it no matter what. But my dad, I think he saw it as like, okay, like that's a nice thing to make Aneek a well-rounded engineer. I don't know. I don't know if he was like, if I actually was like, hey, yo, Dad, I think I really want to pursue this saxophone thing full. I don't think he would let me finish that sentence. By the way, I love my dad. I'm making it sound like he was a very loveless man, but like I think he wanted to make sure that I was straight, and I think he thought the main way that I could do that is doing certain professions, and I think that is something that hearing, because I also listened to Evan's episode as well, and I think that's probably a similar place that they were coming from. Is like we want to make sure that you are good, and it's also just like what we expect men to, with the role we expect men to play for families, which again they're all assuming that we're gonna have like the traditional nuclear family. They expect you are the breadwinner. If you can't do that, then I don't know how much value we really care that you bring it elsewhere. So I think that's always been really concerned for my family. Thinking about, friends of mine who are men, I think it's similar. So, which is unfortunate because I think it starts it has to be related to probably other negative behaviors and habits that men tend to have growing up.
That's so true, and that's what you kind of said. What I was going to touch on as far as like we're not really, well, I guess like as young women, we weren't really like, oh, you need to be this, you need to be that. Well, like our families in particular. But if we're talking about society, right? I remember like seeing online that there are certain people that's like, you going to college to find a husband.
Oh yeah,
like you
that
you
MRS.
doing this, right? Get that MRS, exactly. Like you're literally going to college to find a husband. So I think it's definitely deep rooted in all of us that like the man be the provider and be the breadwinner, and we be the nurturers and the child bearers. And I think that's also probably why they're like, no, I don't get no super serious job. You know, I'm not gonna say
right.
Got kids to have.
Right.
You got kids to take care of. You ain't gonna never be home. So
God forbid the dude takes care of the kids.
God forbid, baby. Yeah.
Holy.
That's not this episode, but but just know
definitely
we could get into it for sure.
Definitely a word. Okay, so in talking about your childhood, as far as like you knowing things that you liked to do you think that any of those likes impacted your adulthood right now? So like for you just told us that you played the saxophone, like do you think that that has impacted the way that you make any of your decisions? Has it enhanced your career, or like the fact that you liked language arts? Like do any of your likes or any of your goals that you had as a child impact how you operate as an adult?
That's a big question. The short answer is yes. There's in a lot of different ways. So one that leapt to my mind is like the English language arts part. That's in a surprising way has helped a lot actually with being good at engineering, because I think the one thing that people do not consider is that most of your job as an engineer is actually to communicate. Because like when you build, you can't build anything complicated by yourself, and so you need to get people on the same page as you on the same page as you. And the only way that they can really know what you need from them, the only way that they can understand what all needs to go into the design is with thorough communication. So like, do you have the right image in your head? Do you know all the steps required for this thing? Like, what are the requirements? Let's get really specific about the requirements. Let's not like leave anything up in the air. What I think is, a good margin of error may not be what you think. So let's say numbers, like that kind of thing. That's what makes a really good engineer. But that's all communication. That has nothing to do with like math and science. So, being aware of how people communicate, people being aware of like how people make arguments, like why people believe certain things. Because that's another thing in engineering, is that you use math and science, but there's still a lot of different ways you could do a singular thing. And so when you say, okay, well, what's the best way to do it? Well, you need, what does best mean? Like, whose definition of best do we care about? Is it like best in terms of performance, which is, engineers, they're always like liable to try to push things to the absolute physical limit. So that's what we would probably assume. But engineers aren't really the ones running the company, business people are. So their version of best is probably good enough performance at appropriate cost. So like making sure we're all on the same page before you try designing something, because that is what will kill projects, is when you realize halfway through, oh, we didn't talk about this enough. That's when things end up crumbling. So, being aware of the human aspect of it has been helpful a lot, really, for engineering. I said a lot that I feel like y'all want to respond to, so I'm gonna stop right there.
Yeah, I want to let that one breathe.
Yeah, you
for just
like,
a small margin of time.
Snapped on that.
Really did. Let me say this. Because so first of all, what I have really, really enjoyed about this season so far is the fact that everybody is so different.
Yeah.
Like we really are well-rounded. We well-rounded friends. Because like our friends are, it's just so many different angles that people are coming from. Like we have our academics, we have our business people, we have our corporate people, we have our artists, right? So all of the things. And so but what I have loved to hear in all of these conversations is the fact that like, it's all about life. You know what I'm saying? Like you take your little thing, but it's real. Like everything that you just said was literally like life lessons. It's all about communication. How do we live?
You cannot build something.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Literally.
Can't build something complex or whatever it was. But in my mind, when I think, I'm like, wow, like you can't move forward without other people. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, say you a self-starter, say you whatever, all the things, I'm a boss, but you're not doing this alone. Like, you know, you're not building anything impactful really by yourself. So that was good.
And also, what stuck out to me was when you were like, oh, okay, well, we want it to be the very best, but it's like, what's your definition of best? It's very similar to like the conversation of like, what do you define as success? Like, what is it? Like, how do you know that you're successful? And it's like, okay, well, what is my definition of success? Because I could be like, oh, I'm successful right now, I'm good. But to somebody else, it's like, I got a long way to go. So that really stuck out to me.
Yes, indeed.
That was good.
It was.
And to kind of jump off of a point that y'all just said, like how improving or like getting better and moving through life almost is always like gets reflected in like being better in whatever career path you decided to go in. I have noticed, generally speaking, when I figure out some sort of like mental roadblock or like frustration, like in my personal life, and I have an epiphany there, that almost always does like cascade into like me being more productive at work in like very subtle ways, just because like you know, and it's kind of, I can't generalize in all the different ways it could, but it just, I always feel like when I reach some point of like understanding myself better or accepting more of myself, just randomly I get more stuff done on the job. I'm just like, I don't know, okay, I guess. And I feel that way too. Like anyone who's really at the top of at least my field, like I've noticed that they all have like the right and appropriate balance of perspective of like, okay, I really do care about this career, but I also care about a lot of stuff outside of that. I feel like the people who can keep that, like, how important is this in my life really in mind, are the people who always are near the top. It's just kind of not everybody, but like most of the people, I've noticed that. Like anyone I'm like, I don't like that person or I don't like working with that person, they tend to not go super far. Generally. Yeah.
Well, that kind of makes me think about something else that we were going to talk about is like relationships. Like, how do you feel like your relationships impact your work? So whether that be like your familial relationships, your personal relationships, like things like that, like how important is that to making sure that you can operate at an optimal level, both professionally and personally?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. It's everything. It's so obviously it's important in both cases, because like if you dealing with a lot of turmoil in your professional life, that's going to seep into your personal, and then vice versa. So you can't neglect either side too much, and then in relationships are just going to be pivotal in both. Like there's a couple of exceptions probably, like depending on what kind of work you do, maybe you don't need to interact with too many people to get your job done, but it's pretty rare, I'd say. So relationships are very important in both, because I think it's important for there to be a clear separation or some kind of separation between who you are professionally and who you are personally, in the sense that not that you like act differently in your professional life, but I think it's important to know like this is not where I need to be getting the things to fill me up personally. Like I don't come here to like be all of me. I come here to like be a certain part of my personality. So like when I work and when I go into the office, you know, I'm thinking about feeding the part of my brain that's like solving puzzles or like doing math or doing science, but I'm not going there to like cut up with a bunch of people. I mean, I make jokes with some people. But I think it's important to know like, well, that's what I have like my personal like relationships for, my friendships, you know, romantic relationships, you know, relationships with my family. Like that's where I feel that part of me, and I can re-energize and feel like I'm being seen in those ways, in that dimension. I think like when you cross the two too much, I think it can get complicated. And I think it's important it's probably not like this is probably exceptions to every rule, but I have found for my life particularly, it's been good to like know I need to have a robust personal life and a professional life if I'm going to be good at either. Like everything needs to be in balance. And then like professionally, it's just so important because man, people don't. At least like when you trying to work your way up, people will not support you if they don't like you. You have to be like a good coworker. Like you have to pick up the slack if someone needs it. You need to be able to, but not do it to the point that you start antagonizing your boss because they ask you to do something particular and you fail to prioritize. Like I see all of that as like maintaining relationships. Like, do my coworkers have a positive feeling about me? Does upper management, I mean, it's really just like my advisor in my case, but like to generalize, does upper management have a good view of me? Because like everybody just likes doing people they like solids. I've noticed like there's a lot of things I didn't think would end up paying off professionally that I just, trying to think of an example. Like people who I just have good interactions with, and if they ask me a question, I give them an answer. If I don't know the answer, I try to help them, point them in the direction of where they could find the answer. That I don't really think much of that. I don't see that as like a vital part of my job, but there's so many times where me doing that has caused that person to later on being, hey, I'm working on this paper. Can you help me with this thing? And then they'll put me as a co-author, which is like very important in research. And really like, I actually did something to contribute to the research, but the reason why they asked me to do it is because they like me. So there's a lot of, you got to look out for yourself, but almost like having good relationships with people is looking out for yourself. Because like, that's like advocacy is a part of looking out for yourself too. So it's important in a lot of different dimensions.
Yeah, you talking good right there. You talking good. This is a really good word for the "that's just how I am" ministry. This is a really really, really good word for I don't need nobody. I don't need no friends. I don't care what Miss Cheryl at the front desk is talking about today. This is like it's very important. It's important. Like likability is a thing. Like I think we say that in teaching all the time. Like a student is not going to learn from you if they don't like you.
And that's just it.
Period, point blank. Like you can literally go to work every day. You can go to the classroom every day and be like, I don't care if she don't like me, this and that. Well, why are you there to teach him? She's not gonna learn from you if she doesn't like you. So yeah, that's important. Likability is important, people.
It's tight, but it's right, as they say.
But it's right.
But you said something else where it was like, basically in order to be able to progress, like you need the relate. So it's like you said it in a way that's like you cannot have one without the other. So I can't see career progression or any progression at all without maintaining and creating these like genuine relationships. And it was something else you said. I was like, I need to make sure I say something about that because it was something. Go back, Aneek.
I can talk a bit more about that. Basically, like I feel like just having, I am at my best when I'm at peace. And there's a lot of things that can disrupt that peace. And it's like things at work that can disrupt my peace. If that's like maybe, man, I really feel like I'm not making the progress that I want to be making, like that can disrupt your peace and then make me like not as good of a friend or not as good of a partner, like personally. But then similarly, if I have a lot of turmoil, like in my personal life, I, for whatever reason, have decided to like distance myself from friends, like not because there's an issue, but just because like I'm just withdrawing like unnecessarily from them. Or if I have like a really painful conversation that's like I'm either not looking forward to having or it's still lingering in my head, like any of that unresolved stuff. I mean, you could say that you could just kind of put it out of your head, but I don't know about y'all. I've never been particularly successful in doing that. So if I kick the can down the road personally, it will show up in how I work. Like I can't focus like on my job, like I can't focus kind of in anything. And then even just like relationship with myself, like if I don't like take care of my own body by like sleeping at the right time or like eating in a way that like, promotes health in my body. I ain't telling y'all to go on a diet, just I don't want nobody thinking I'm saying that. I'm saying like eating nutritionally, feeding your body. Like, I feel like, listening to your body, both in terms of eating something healthy and eating something not healthy. It's sometimes, man, I just want a burger. And I feel like if that's gonna be on your head if you say no enough times, you know what I mean? But just not being perturbed, like being at peace, making sure that you're maintaining your peace in like every dimension. It leaks into other stuff. Like you can't. I think people think you can just separate it. Like, oh, okay, like that's not going well, but like everything else is going well. Eventually, though, because that's a part of you, it is gonna leak. Like there's no way to really separate it.
Right. Yeah, I think compartmentalization is really a scam. Like we think we're able to compartmentalize things, but we are not. And I think that we learned that from the generation that raised us. It's like you keep working, you keep, and it's like but when you came home, right, and you was going off on everybody, you wasn't compartmentalized. You know what I'm saying? You're going off on me because something happened, and I'm not saying that's necessarily my experience, but like something happened to you during your workday that has affected you now at home. And that's so, right. To your point, like we can't really, if something is going awry enough in one area, it will in fact bleed into other areas.
That's correct.
And that reminded me of what I was going to say earlier. How like what I think the biggest lesson that I think I have learned towards the end of 2022 and definitely already at the top of 2023 is not looking to a job to fulfill me in a way that will make me feel like I'm saving the world. You know what I'm saying? It's like, friend, listen, what did I tell you? I was like, your purpose is so much bigger than this one role. So it's like looking and putting that pressure on one role to be like, yes, I'm going to be all of these things to all of these people. And it's like, girl, it's one job. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one thing. It's one set of bullet points, right? And there's no way that that's going to be able to encapsulate you as a person or, what it is that you're ultimately supposed to bring. And, you might bring a certain set of things to that one space, but like I think my mindset shift has been like, okay, but you're in here for this season of season of your life and for this span of time. You cannot expect to like, okay, I need everyone's life to drastically change.
Every single person.
I'm talking about from, I don't know, but like it's just
you on my street.
Excuse me. Yeah, but I'm knocking.
You're on my street.
But yeah, so anyway, that's been a big mindset shift for me. And you made me think about that when it was like, I can't come to work looking for somebody to fill me up the same way that my friends or my family would fill me up. Because it's just, friend, listen, come do your things and clock out, okay? or close your laptop, whatever it is that you like to do, or however it is that you make your money. But yeah.
That's facts.
Y'all are really talking good.
No, yeah, it is really good. So let me ask you this, Aneek. Can you?
That was real. It was just
let me ask you something.
Right?
Come here. Let me ask you something. Yeah. Let me ask you something. But can you think of a time in your journey where you were able to see your growth, like in real time?
Our faith.
That's a good question. I think it's been like a couple moments like that. Probably this is gonna tie back into what Georgia said actually. So probably like around this time last year, because I've said like I know that I'll be defending like late spring, like sometime in April. But this time last year, I wasn't 100% sure if that was going to happen. So PhDs, for those unfamiliar, are I'm glad that I did it, but they're low-key scams. Because the thing is that you have to do to get the doctorate is like you have to produce something new, like something that no one's done before. As you can imagine, depending on how old your field is, that might be kind of hard because there's been a lot of dudes doing a lot of stuff. And so like it was unclear to me this time last year what the novelty I was going to be presenting in my dissertation was going to be, which is pivotal. If I can't do that, I can't graduate. And that was something that was stressing me out most of the PhD is like, I got to figure out something, I got to do this. And I was kind of rushing from like project to project, trying to figure out what's going to be the thing. And I think like end of last year, I kind of reached a point where I'm like, okay, you really like put this in perspective. If I do not finish this PhD, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? And I kind of thought about it and I was like, well, I already have a master's degree from Columbia University, which is a pretty decent consolation prize. And like, ain't no one going to call me dumb. No one's going to like say like, oh, wow, you couldn't figure that out. I could have It's like I was doing something legitimately hard.
Right.
And I realized like, I'm beating myself up more than I would beat anyone else up for this thing. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try my best. I'm gonna see what I can do in like the time I have left in the program, because there's like a time limit. You do have to kind of get done within a certain amount of time. I'll see what I can do. Whatever happens, happens. But I'm not gonna stress this out. I'm not gonna stress myself out. I'm not gonna like lose sleep over this. I'm not gonna like, I have been wanting to like get a little bit more active, specifically just because like there's just things physically I wanted to be able to say I could do, like run or like lift a certain amount of weights. I had just been pushing off because it's like, well, I'm in the PhD, I'll do that after the PhD. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to wait to the end of the PhD to live my life. I'm going to do all that stuff and this, and then whatever happens is whatever happens. And funny enough, I think that particularly put me in the place to actually finish the PhD, because I was able to like roll with the punches better. I wasn't like trying to figure out, okay, the way I'm gonna finish the PhD is this. I was like, oh, this seems interesting. I'm gonna just work on it and see where it goes. And literally all of the things that have contributed to like as the fundamental parts of my thesis got figured out within the last year. And it was all products of me being like, all right, let me just see where this goes. Like, I don't know if it'll be productive, but let me just try it. This is obviously not the place to go into details, but like, basically both of them, one of them happened because I was having a random conversation with a lab mate of mine. I was like, oh, how does this thing work? Because I assumed that he just knew because we were doing stuff with it. He was like, oh, we don't know actually. And I was like, oh, I feel like there has to be some way to figure that out. And so I was like, oh, I'll spend like a weekend on it. If I can figure it out, great. If I don't, whatever. I figured it out and it ended up being like half my thesis. And then the other half came from me just realizing this thing that I had been working on the entire time, but it never quite worked out the way I exactly thought it was going to work out. I looked at it again and I was like, well, hold on. Even though this doesn't look like how I thought it should, this is still something. I should like package this up and like write it up and submit it somewhere. And then like, yeah, so I just, over me being more flexible, I saw that I was just getting more stuff done. And like people were appreciating what I was getting done. And I just felt more comfortable, generally speaking. And I this is like one of the first times in the PhD program I felt like I knew what I was doing. And so that I'd say most of last year was me being like, oh, am I getting better at this? I might be stepping a little bit with this. So yeah, I'd say like that's probably been like the most transformative like period where I'm like, oh, I really can tell like I'm not that I'm better. I was always good, but like that I'm becoming more of the person and researcher I'd like to be. That's like what I noticed throughout most of last year.
Hey,
it was loaded. It was loaded. That was loaded.
Understand that I had to take out my notes like I was in church. I said I got to be able to.
She did.
To know. So if you see me looking down, I was taking a note because you really just read me for Phil, and I just need you to do it. And I'm gonna just say what it is on the notes, okay? Not waiting to live life. That's for somebody. I'm somebody, right? Not waiting to live life was so like that is so important to say. And like the word that I wrote down, you didn't say it, but just like the sense that I was getting was like surrender. It was like, as soon as you was like, you know what, I'm gonna either get it or I'm not, right? What's the worst that can happen? That's when everything started to click for you. So I'm just like, wow, as soon as you can take the pressure off yourself to, you know, for something to work out exactly the way you think, like you said, it should work out, that's when it started to work out. I'm getting excited.
That's good.
Yes. Cause yeah. So that was that. So surrender was a word that I wrote down because I was just like, it seems like as soon as you was like, you know, I let go of my expectations. That's the other thing too. Like whatever I had in my mind about how, I'm in her business too. Whatever I had in my mind about how I thought it was supposed to work out. So that was another thing I wrote down. It's like the how versus the what. So it's like, even though it's not doing how I thought it would do, it's still doing the thing. You know what I'm saying? And like that taking a step back. My favorite thing to say is like, sometimes you got to zoom out, right? Because, you know, so like hyper focused on this one thing. And it's like, as soon as you zoom out and get a little bit more context, a little bit more perspective, it just, for whatever reason, start to make sense all of a sudden. Right. So
that reminded me a lot of, I don't know if you've seen the clip, but there is this clip of Leslie Jones and she's on The View. And one of the panelists or whatever, one of the hosts was like, was it true that like you were about to quit comedy? And she was like, I mean, I wasn't gonna quit, you know, like I was just extremely frustrated with where I was. And like a lot of times we can kind of confuse that with like, I'm about to quit, you know. And she was like, Whoopi, like talking to Whoopi Goldberg, and Whoopi was like, yeah, like it's been a lot of times that I wanted to quit, but the important thing is after you had the feeling of wanting to quit, you kept going. So like what that like reminded me of that when you were like, you had that point where you were just like, okay, so what would happen if I stopped the program? Like, what's the worst that would happen if I quit? Well, I mean, I got this and I did that, but you kept going, which I think is that's the most important part. It's like, yeah, we will want to quit probably, most likely.
Right.
We're gonna want to quit. We're probably gonna want to quit more than once. But the important thing is that we keep on going.
And you know what? Okay, and you didn't say this just then, but I thought about like a conversation that we had that I had, and it's been a while since we had it, but I remember. I'll be listening now. Okay. but
good listener.
Thank you. I do my best. But you said something along the lines of like, I just was doing stuff and I was seeing what worked, right? Like, so I'm paraphrasing very heavily, but when it was like, when I was trying to figure out, like when I was trying to like hone what my research topic was really going to be, right? I was just sort of like spitballing, like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what was going to stick. But like, and then the thing you said was like, you know, essentially I did a lot of like, quote unquote, wrong things right before I arrived at the right thing. So it was like I did a whole lot of things in the interim before I was finally like, but like you took away a little bit from each of those like interim projects too, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to do anything with this, but I, you know, now I understand at least this little section better. I'm not going to, I'm not, you know, I can't do anything with this altogether, but it's like now I understand at least this piece a little bit better and how it all sort of lent itself to, like you said, now, you know, and it being the latter half of your, you know what I'm saying? My dog said he been in the game six years. You understand?
The last that you were like,
yeah,
fifth year, finally.
Wow.
Who is it for? Who is it for? Yeah. Sometimes you got to wait till the fifth year, huh? Yeah. It's like year 1 through 4.
Yeah, no, that's and I think I remember the conversation you're talking about, because like, I was talking about, and this is just generally, once again, it's like, I think keys to success in your professional life is definitely the same thing as keys to success, like personally too. Like what was happening, I don't know if I phrased it this way, but like what was happening there is like I was trying to figure out what something was. And like, I wasn't getting the answer correct, but what was happening every time is I was figuring out what it wasn't. Okay, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. And like, that's just as useful as also figuring out what it is as well. Because like, if you can if you know what it's not, that gives you a better sense of what it actually is.
That's right.
Which the reason why I thought that was important personally too is because, I mean, like, so Joy is aware of this. I don't know if she's talked to you about this, Evo, but like I've weighed like a lot more. Well, just like historically, just throughout my life, but even at the like beginning of like 2022, like I was a lot big. I've lost like 70 something pounds or something like that, like throughout my life, and you know, society be fat phobic, so it's not like I've never tried losing weight before. But it just anything I tried, just like it didn't work. And like this, I actually did lose weight, and it was ironically the one time I was not actually trying to lose weight. It was all I was trying to do is like, okay, look, what do I want? I want to be able to do certain things. I want to be able to say I can like run some sort of distance and just generally be healthy and generally eat well. And I kind of decided, you know what? If I get to the end of that whole thing and I still am overweight, I don't give a shit. I'm like, whatever. Like, hey, listen, I can still run. So, so I don't know what the problem is. And it was doing that. I actually was open to what do I actually like doing? What do I actually like eating? Like, you know, what exercises do I actually like? I wasn't just picking stuff because like, oh, that really sucks. So I must be like, you know, burning a lot of calories. I'm like, no. If I'm gonna do this, I need to actually like it. So I tried things and like, yeah, like some things at first I didn't like, but every time I'm like, okay, well, it's not that. That's not how I'm going to get to where I want to go, but it gives me a better sense. I won't try anything like that. Or then maybe something else happens and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe the issue wasn't this aspect of this other thing I tried. It was this other thing. And like, you know, slowly, I was slow at the beginning of the year. By the like halfway mark, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what I like eating. I know what exercises I like doing. I can make this a thing I regularly do. And then that's when it happened. So yeah, it's like you can't just like, if the first thing doesn't work, you can't just like stop. It's like, okay, well, I learned something. Let me see if I could use what I learned and like turn it into something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ooh. That's good.
And I'm back to my notes. Because I just heard so much. Like, again, I don't know if this is a thing that y'all do, but I think I like to, so when I write in my journal, I title them, and this happened on accident. Like, it's not something I set out to do, but like I'll title them as if they're like book chapters. And so like, that's what I was just doing while you were talking. And like, two of the things was like pushing through the plateau. That seems to be a theme, like pushing through like that moment where it's like, this is just not working, or here I am, I'm not making any progress, right? And shifting your focus. And with like that pushing through the plateau is really like loud to me right now, because like I feel like, you know, if we're using like a gym analogy, right? Like there's a moment where, you know, if you're on a weight loss journey, or if you're on like you're trying to gain more muscle or whatever, there's a moment in everyone's journey that I feel like you plateau. And so you either are going to like push past that point and continue making the progress, or you're gonna be like, dang, that's it. Like, you know, and sort of give up and digress. And so just thinking about, again, all of this is just so real in my life currently, right? Like really figuring out what is not, right? You know what I'm saying? Because what it is or what it's not is just as important as what it is. That was another one that read me. But oh, Aneek, I knew we had the right one. I knowed it.
That was really good. What I was thinking about was the the deductive reasoning there.
The what?
The deductive reasoning there.
Oh.
Like, oh, okay, well, in doing all of this, I may not know what I want, but I know what I don't. I think it was like a while ago when we were talking about like, you know, relationship goals and like, what is it that you want? You gotta know what you want, so you know what you're looking for, and just all these different things. And I was like, I don't know what I want,
right?
And I was like, but I know what I don't want. And that's a start.
That's a start.
That's a start for sure. So yeah, that's a word. And I'm just gonna piggyback off what you said earlier. I hate that phrase.
Piggyback. Yeah, it's really loud. Yeah.
I'm gonna go corporate first. So circling back.
Yeah.
To what Joy said earlier, like I really love the guests that we have had because it spans to so many different industries, but there are just so many gems for life in every single conversation that we've had. I just wanted to name that because this is really cool.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
That's super dope.
A doctor, please.
Success in a lot of different areas rhymes. I feel like I talk to a lot of people who are like doing well in other areas. I'm just like, man, that's exactly.
Wait, did you say the same thing?
Yeah, right. No, it's just like anytime I talk to like if I tell somebody like if I'm telling someone like, oh, this is this thing that I figured out and that really helped me get to where I am right now, even if they're in something completely different than me, the amount of times someone's been like, hey, same thing. That was the same exact thing that I had to figure out or I had to realize. So it's just, even if we're doing different stuff, I feel like it takes a lot of the same lessons. So,
That's right.
That's right. Good stuff is universal.
It is. It is. And I think we run the risk of like, that also keeps you from being on your island, as people say, is like, if you start to feel like, oh, it's just me, I'm just gonna like, no, there's no way Joy can understand this. This is a doctoral program. And you're right, I don't understand nothing about electrical.
I was gonna actually ask you engineering, what that is.
That's not my ministry. That's not my ministry. However, I do understand people a lot, right? Like I do understand what it means to have to communicate. Let me not say I understand people. Wait. I interact with people a lot, right? I'm still learning. I'm still learning people and all the things, but we all know what it is to have to work with difficult people, right? We all know what it is to have been the difficult person. Amen. Sometimes we don't want to say it's us, but it is. We all understand like what it's like to have a hard time, like doing anything. So I think on those grounds, like that's how we're able to connect. And I think it is important to get out of your bubble. So I really do appreciate the fact that like, again, everybody seems to just be, doing different things. But like, if you're a solid person, that was the other thing too. I was going to say, when you were talking about relationships, and I was like, it sounds like you just being a decent person. Yeah. Which which is far-fetched for a lot of people. For some people, it's a little controversial.
Ain't so common.
That's what they said. What did you say about the something get you to the room, but you gotta get kicked out?
Yeah, I say your talents, your skills, and your gifts will get you to the table, but your character will keep you there.
That's facts. Yo, that's real. Man, there's a lot of there's a lot of people. I'm like, my first impression, oh man, they're really smart. And that didn't change. So I still think they're smart, but I don't want to work with them again. And there's a lot of I've talked to when I was doing like job interviews, like there's like several people who are like, we want somebody smart, obviously, but there's a certain point after which that's not as important as do I like you. That's like if your intelligence don't really matter that much if no one you need to talk to wants to talk to you. So yeah,
that sounds exactly. I don't know what that's for, but write it down. But that's not, so when we were first starting when we were finishing up institute, which is the thing we had to do to like train, to be teachers. And I had an interview with my AP, and I remember at the end of the interview, she was like, "Do you have any questions?" And I was like, "Yeah, and I'm still a baby, right? Fresh out of school. Like I haven't had too many like job interviews where it's like my big girl jobs, right?" But I was like, "Yeah, you didn't really ask me about what I could do. Like, you didn't ask me how many words per minute I type, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't ask me like things like that." And she was like, "Because I don't really care about that transactional stuff." She was like, "Because I can teach you that." She was like, "I'm interested in your mindset." And so the questions that she was asking had more to do with how do you react in these situations? Like how, you know what I'm saying? And I was just like, huh. And I have never, obviously it's been several years ago at this point, but I have never forgotten that conversation because it just reminds me that like, if your mind and your heart are in the right place, right, then all the other, you can be taught to do anything.
That's right.
Right. And so, but you have to be teachable. You have to be teachable. You have to be willing to learn, and you have to, like you said, like we keep coming back to, people gotta like you. Sorry. They have to, like, and you shouldn't do things to make people like you, right? But I think generally,
right,
you know, and even more than like, they have to just like respect you. There's people that I'm like, oh, that's not my homegirl, right? But I respect her.
right.
I don't hate to interact with this person. So yeah.
Right.
That was my tip.
For sure. Okay. Describe your journey in 3 words.
Okay. 3 words. Self-reflection. That counts as one word, right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Hyphen. Flexibility and love is what I say. Because I just feel like anytime I'm like dealing with a lot of issues, mostly in my personal life, it's coming from a place of me not really pausing and sitting with myself. Like it's coming from me not being, okay, hold up, Aneek, what's going on? Like, what's up? Because I think, at least for me, because it's me, I forget that I can have a relationship with myself and like I can listen to myself and I'm like, oh well, I know what I want. Like I know what's on my mind. Like, no, that's not bothering me. Why? Because I would know that that was bothering me. But like that, you only know when you like give yourself space to do it. You know, so like making sure that I'm always like reflecting is something that's become very important to me over time. The love is important because if you do that, sometimes you will notice things about yourself that you are inclined to not to like reject. You're like, oh wait, hold on a second, I don't. That's not me though. Like, cause a good person is blank, and like a good person does this, and like, you know, I think there's been a lot of issues that I've been slow to deal with or handle because I didn't have the capacity to like just accept myself and what I was seeing. Like if you do the self-reflection, you have to be willing to actually like look at yourself and like look at what you're seeing. Because you can lie to yourself very easily. I do it. I have done it chronically. It's like a lot of work not to be as good at it as I used to be. So, you know, making sure that I'm always being kind to myself and practicing love towards myself, treating myself as well and as kindly and as considerately as I treat my friends, which is something that I think I struggle with a lot. That's been important too. And then the flexibility is just kind of going back to what I was saying earlier. Like there's been a lot of moments in my life where I had a very particular vision. And I think it not going exactly the way I saw was causing a lot of distress. But you know, that's me kind of losing, like what Joy was saying, like, you know, sometimes you need to zoom out and like, okay, well, hold on. What am I actually trying to do? Because like if you actually ask the question what I'm trying to do, rarely is the very specific thing the way that this was working out, like, or you wanted it to work out, rarely is that actually pivotal to it. You know what I'm saying? Because like for the doctoral degree, like I didn't even really want to be a doctor. I wanted to like, you know, there's moments where I thought that was the only thing I wanted to do. But when I really thought about it, like, well, I just want like a career I like that where I can support myself. Right. And that's what made me comfortable with like whatever happens with the doctoral program, because it's like, oh, I could do that. Even if I get kicked out of this program, I could figure something out and still be happy. And so that's like knowing what the true end goal is and what you actually don't want to be flexible about gives you flexibility in everything else. You're like, oh, okay, well then shoot, like, well then it doesn't matter if I do it this way or this other way, because at the end of the day, I'm still going to where I need to go. But you always need to like know where you're going to be able to do that. But like the flexibility, I think, is what has allowed me to like start moving with a lot more peace and then with a lot more directions, because I'm not trying to force things to happen in a certain way. I'm just, you know, wherever the path is going, I might like take one step forward, 2 steps back, whole bunch of steps to the left, But you know, I know that if I'm flexible enough, I'm gonna get there eventually.
That's good. That's really good.
Yes, all of that. I have a quick point of or question of clarification. So when we were talking about love, and you were like, and if you do that, you have to. So my question, because the way that I understand it or understood it while you were talking, you can tell me like, that ain't it. But like when you were like loving yourself, in doing that causes you to see yourself, and you have to. In order to see yourself, you have to love yourself, and I think like that kind of goes along with the I don't know, like holding yourself accountable in some ways too. So I don't. That's what to. It was like because I think when you first start thinking about love, you're like, oh, it's so I take bubble baths, I light the candles, right?
Self-care.
Like self-care. We can get into it, but anyway, but when you think about it like that, very surface level, but the way that you were describing it, it sounded like no, because I love myself, I need to be doing these things that are sometimes uncomfortable for me and that are, and that will require me in certain areas, and that's not fun. Like discipline is not always ever fun, right? So
right.
Yeah. So is that what you were kind of getting at with?
They're very linked. That's not exactly what I meant, but I think what I was talking about is necessary to hold yourself accountable because I have found anytime I wasn't holding myself accountable in a relationship, it's because I thought if I admit that I did this, or if I admit that I'm still struggling with this thing, that means I'm not a good person. That's not deserving of love. And I feel like it's like anytime I'm able to like be accountable to other people, it's like only once I'm like, you know what, whatever happens, I know that I was doing my best. So I'm not going to like beat myself up incessantly. I made a mistake. That doesn't mean that I'm not worthy of being somebody's friend. That doesn't mean I'm not worthy of whatever. And that puts me in a place where I can actually have like a real conversation with someone and like own up to like a mistake that I made. I won't go into the details, but like Joy and I were hanging out recently, and I was a little, I wasn't in my complete right mind, and I didn't say nothing completely out of pocket, but I definitely was a lot more antagonistic than I really had ever been with Joy. I think if I was coming from that in a place where I'm like, well, I'm not a bad person, what that would have led me to say is, well, she tripping. Like I wasn't really like that, like, bad or whatever. Like, actually, as a matter of fact, if she hadn't done blank, blank, blank or whatever, like, if I'm not willing to just be like, hey, dude, it's okay that you made a mistake, like I'm gonna figure out a way around it, like mentally. And it was only because I'm like, you know what? I'm human. I made mistakes. I'm gonna just own up to it. That made it a lot easier. Just be like, hey, Joe, I was tripping. My bad. That's not me. I'm gonna think about why I did that. I think it's because of blah, 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 whatever. But I was tripping and I apologize. Like anytime I'm able to do that with people, like it's coming from a place of security and like being able to just, I am where I am and not being mad at myself that I'm not where I think ideally I should be, just like respecting like where I am on the process, where I am in the journey. So
Baby, I hope y'all got y'all pencil and pen out paper. That's all I got to say. I really hope you got it out here. It was something else that you just said. And when it was like, I have to decide what I'm actually not, what I can be flexible about and what I'm actually not flexible about, right? So like that to me, I heard standards, right? Like what are my standards? What are the things that I'm refusing to move on? Right. Versus the things that I was like, will it get done? Yes. And I can sort of bend on those things. But did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, no, that is standards for sure. Like you can't, because if everything's inflexible, then like what is the point of the standard? Like there's like the standard, like the point is that this is the one thing we're not gonna like go back and forth on, right? That's if everything's inflexible, it's like, well, you're just being kind of wild, honestly. Anytime I've been like, oh no, it got to go like this, and then this, and then this, or rather, because I mean, I've done that a lot of times and not noticed that I was being crazy. But anytime like I have a friend or I'm hearing somebody say that all these things got to go in order, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. You smart. I don't know if that's gonna work out the way you think it's gonna. Because it's a lot. Because usually it's a lot of things you don't have control over. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, like throughout my PhD program, I probably would have like, okay, like, within the first year and a half, I'm gonna publish in this thing, and then, after a little bit of that, I'm gonna contribute to this project, and then I'm gonna do that thing, and then I'm gonna get this award, and then I'm gonna do this other whatever, and like all that. Some of that I have control over, but a lot of that is people looking at me and being like, yeah, I think you're smart. I'm gonna give you this award or something like that. And, if I'm being really inflexible about that's just gonna cause me a lot of anxiety because like I like it's it almost feels like when, or at least to me, when you say I'm inflexible about this thing, you're almost implicitly saying because I have complete control over it. So, I decide to be flexible about things like I can't really decide if that's gonna go that way. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe that goes that way, maybe it goes a different way, but like I can't really control that. So but what I can control is how I interact with people in a job. I can't control how much like effort I put into certain things. I can control generally what I want my life to look like. Maybe not the details, but I can control like, well, am I happy? Can I take care of myself? I have like some amount of control over that. So like there's like, a lot of things so those things I'm inflexible about. Like treating people well, I'm inflexible about. I'm never gonna be an ass to anybody, even if they sometimes they be trying me, they be testing me, but like, I'm still like, what, but that's something I can control, so I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to do my best to not do that. When you get inflexible about things, yeah, I didn't think about it until I started talking, but it does kind of imply you have complete control over it. Mm-hmm.
I think you might have solved life a little bit just then, for real, because that like that sounds like a very major key to life. It's just like so much of this stuff is above whoever the little boy was. It's above me.
It's above me now.
It's above me. Like so many things are above me. Like so many things are just completely like, chill. You know what I'm saying? Like, what can I do? So again, back to that shifting your focus back to the things that I do have control over. I do, I can take care of myself. I can eat better. I can, make sure I exercise. I can treat people well. All these things. Yeah. Peace. That sounds like
no. Peace. That's listen, I like the further I go in the journey, the more like my whole persona just becomes vibes. I'm much more chill now, and I feel like that has helped me live the life I actually want to live. It's just like we just vibe. We make and pay attention to the vibes too. Like if the vibes are off, even if everything else on paper seems right, if the vibes are off, maybe listen to that. You usually ain't completely wrong about it. Maybe it's like maybe you making up some of that stuff, but not all of it. So yeah.
Yeah. So you said this journey it's really been vibes recently. So how do you feel like your journey will unfold?
Oh man. Just more vibes. I think like
we're gonna keep vibes.
Simply put, more vibes. But cause yeah, I don't know, just like the I ain't gonna say I don't feel a sense of responsibility, but like I feel like as I go on, I just realize like how many things I had self-imposed on myself, like things that like needed to get done, I was putting on myself and like no one else did, and it's just been slowly like, okay, well, no, I can decide if I really want to do that, and I don't want to do that. So I feel like I'm taking more things off of my shoulders as time goes on, and I just feel a lot freer, and I feel like I can be a lot more just like me. Like I just be me more. Because I'm not putting all this stuff on me that's like forcing me to act a certain way. So like, yeah, I think that's the journey of foes. Like, you know, just more vibes, like paying more attention to myself and like actually living the life I want to live.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, just like not getting out of my own way. It's like, you know, living how I want to live and not being the reason why I'm not living that way. Yeah.
Aneek, listen here.
Getting out of my own way.
Get out of my own way and let me not be the reason, huh? That I can't do what I want to do. That's crazy. Well, you was really deep off in my business today. I don't know about you, friend,
Yeah,
but
he definitely had some gems.
He was in my stuff for sure. Well, yes, Aneek, thank you so much for agreeing to spend time at the house with us.
Word.
You know,
of course.
Wait, before you go,
before you head out to the car,
what is electrical engineering?
Oh man, it's kind of.
I mean, I've heard, you know, like mechanical engineering, civil engineering, like of course audio engineering. 'Cause I'm a musician, but like, what is electrical engineering?
Okay, that's big. Electrical engineering is a lot of stuff. Generally, so engineering is just like manipulating math and science to get something done. Electrical engineering is specifically using the physics of electricity to do that. So it's like if anything touches electricity and like it can be invented or built, it's electrical engineering. So like power delivery. I don't work in that, but like power delivery is like electrical engineering. Computers is like a mix of a couple different kinds of engineering, but it's mostly electrical engineering. It's very broad. Like if someone says, there's been a lot of people who's like, oh, my dad's an electrical engineer. Like that does not mean I know what he does, because like that the field is big. I don't know. I don't touch that. That's not me. That's not my domain.
Right.
Yeah. So the specific thing I do is more related to like computing. But like really like high powered computing, like supercomputers or like data centers and stuff like that. If you've ever heard like all the big stuff that helps like Google like suggest ads to you when you do searches, or like Netflix like generate like recommendations or stuff, like that's all computed in a data center. Like so it's stuff like that, and then supercomputers that just solve like really ridiculously hard problems, like I don't know, like what's the electron cloud of something? I don't know. I don't really touch that stuff. But you know, they do crazy physics stuff or finance stuff too. But computing is like the subfield that I'm in. So yeah, that's that. I hope like generally electrical engineering, if you could plug it into a wall, it is likely related to electrical engineering.
Got you. Okay.
Ooh, that just made me think of something. Okay, this isn't our usual little game, but like, this just came to me. So, little game is what we call it, but I'll do a different version of it. So, if you had to give your journey thus far, right? And this will be our benediction. If you had to give your journey thus far, like, name it as a song, what would the song title be?
Oh man.
I love this.
Oh man. I guess first pass, I'd say like You'll Be Alright.
And we got Kendrick, right? Yeah,
there we go.
Right.
Kung Fu Kenny. There we go. I didn't even plan it. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, You'll Be Alright, I guess is what I call it. But yeah, I know we gotta go soon, but I do want to say I appreciate y'all inviting me into the Auntie house. It's been really good. And I also just want to say I really love this podcast. I be telling Joe all the time, but I also want to tell you, Evo, this podcast is dope. I think the reason why you guys have so many good conversations with so many of your friends is because y'all make a space where people feel free to talk about all this stuff in their life. And that's not easy. That's like, you know, this is something really, truly special. So I appreciate y'all having me on. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll be supporting y'all all the way through. I've enjoyed being at the Auntie house.
Thank you so much, Aneek, and thank you to everybody who's watching, everybody who is listening, and we will see y'all the next time y'all get dropped off
at your Auntie's house.